Joanne Banko, and as a sewing instructor, I like to do all kinds of sewing. I like to sew garments, I like to sew crafts, I even like to dabble in quilting. So today we're going to show you a quilting project where you can make this patchwork pinwheel block and turn it into a great summer tote bag. Now if you look at this beautiful bright colored bag, you're going to see that I used orange and pink blocks. I actually got my inspiration from the colorful beach towel that you see inside the bag. That's a really good idea. You know, if you have trouble picking out colors for your quilts, think about looking at a ready-made item or perhaps even a piece of fabric and choose some colors there that you like, and even take it to the store with you and pick out your fabrics that way. It's a great way for those of us that are a little bit color challenged and tend to match things really well. So that's a great way to start picking out your fabrics. So if you take a look at this bag, you can see that I've got two patchwork blocks. They're identical. We've got one for the front and one for the back. And then the inside is lined just with a solid piece of fabric. The straps are actually made from grosgrain ribbon. You can see my grosgrain ribbon yardage here. I've got a wider orange and then a narrower pink. And if you look back over at the bag, you can see I just simply layered those two together and zigzagged them to attach the two. It's a great way to make straps that are interesting and sturdy at the same time. So let me guide you through the steps for making this patchwork pinwheel block. One of the things I love about this block is it's great for beginners or even experienced quilters. So if you're a beginner, it's nice because you only need to choose two fabrics. That makes it easy. If you're an experienced quilter, you might have a preferred method for putting together a pinwheel patchwork block, and that's fine. Go ahead and use your preferred method if you want. But today we're going to use a very simple, straightforward method. We're going to start out with two blocks of fabric, one orange of course and one pink. And if you look at the blocks I have here, they're large. They're 16.5-inch square. That's the size that you need to make the tote bag. But for today we're going to work with smaller blocks. I've got some smaller block samples prepared for you so that you can see the steps. All right, you ready? Step one. Step one, we're going to take each square of fabric. Remember, you have one square of pink and one square of orange, and we're going to divide that square equally. We're going to simply divide it in half from side to side, in half from top to bottom, and we're going to divide it across the diagonal. Now I actually drew lines on my fabric, but I only did that so that you could see really well where you're going to be cutting. When you actually cut your block, you could just make little dash marks at those halfway points, and then take your ruler and your rotary cutter, and you're going to just simply connect from point to point or dot to dot. You're going to cut those blocks, and you're going to end up with two blocks, one pink and one orange. You're going to actually have 8 triangles. Now what we're going to do is we're going to actually lay out those triangles just the way they're going to look when you stitch the block. You can see it starting to form that pretty pinwheel. So we've got those laid out. The very next step is to take them and start putting them together so that we can sew those pieces. We've got a pink to an orange all around that little pinwheel. Now I want you to realize that these instructions for making this step by step are going to be available for you to download from the website. So you're going to see the layout in really good diagrams. That'll take you through step by step and make it easy for you. Once you've pieced those together, this is what your block's going to look like. All nice and neat and making that perfect pinwheel patchwork block. The next step is we're going to layer that block to a piece of thin cotton batting. I really like working with a thinner cotton batting, especially for a crafty type project like this. Makes it very easy to handle. And we're going to cut an oversized piece. So when we lay our block down, we're going to have a margin of batting around there. But before I do, I just want to talk for just a minute here about the layers that I have. You know, if you're, again, an experienced quilter, you're going to know that generally you're going to be quilting through 3 layers: your top, your batting, and your backing. But it's okay to just go ahead and quilt through 2 layers for a craft project. Let's move over to the machine and get set up for 1/4 inch. When you set up with the 1/4 inch foot, it's going to give you perfect, even, easy, consistent 1/4 inch seams. And you know, that's what it's all about in quilting. You need to have consistency. So I've got the machine set up for a straight stitch. I've shortened my stitch length just a little bit, and I like to do that because it makes it easy to sew that seam without having to worry about back stitching. So I want you to see how neat and even this is when we're stitching with the 1/4 inch foot. I'm simply going to put the edge of the fabric right up against the guide, and you might want to think about that guide being like a little fence. You know, a friend of mine was teaching her granddaughter how to sew, and she told her little granddaughter, just keep the fabric up against the fence and you'll be all right. I thought that was a pretty good idea. We're going to stitch all the way to the end of that point, cut the thread, raise the presser foot, and wow, what a perfect 1/4 inch. Each block, each square is going to be absolutely even and consistent. So the next thing we're going to do is talk about the walking foot. And we're going to attach this walking foot to the machine. Okay, we've attached the walking foot and we're ready for the next step. I'm going to reach over and I'm going to grab my finished pinwheel patchwork piece, and we're going to do the quilting on this now. Now I've got the walking foot set up for this particular machine. That's called a digital dual feed walking foot. And I've got a few other walking feet set down on the table here, and what you can see is that you really have a variety of options with walking feet. Walking feet come in open toe and closed toe versions, and we're going to stitch this block with the dual feed foot. I'm going to select a decorative stitch from the machine. I'm going to select a feather stitch. That's one of the great advantages of the digital dual feed. What makes it really different is that this foot is driven by a belt instead of the teeth that are found on a normal even feed or walking foot. So we can select stitches that are not normally available to us for using with a regular walking foot. We can select stitches that move backward and forward and side to side. And you know, this machine is so smart that if I try to select another stitch on this screen, they're grayed out. I don't even have the option for picking a stitch that's incorrect. The machine protects me from that. I'm going to stitch right along this block from end to end, and I'm stitching so that half of my stitch falls on the left and half of the stitch falls on the right. That's why I selected the open toe version of this foot. The closed toe will give us a little bit more control and a little more pressure, but when we need visibility, we want to choose that open toe. So I'm going to bring over here and show you my finished block, and it's all stitched with a beautiful feather stitch. I've got a finished patchwork pinwheel block, and I like to tell you just a couple other little accessories for quilting that I used for this. I used quilting needles and I used quilting thread. Quilting thread can be poly, it can be cotton, it can even be a blend of polyester and cotton. I want you to take these tips, I want you to read the instructions on the website so you can make your own pretty patchwork pinwheel block and turn it into a fun summer tote.